conservative individuals who say there are only two genders, do they have a point? Yeah, they have 98% of a point. There are mostly just two genders. Is there space on the periphery for some gender stuff that's not just one or two? Oh yeah, hell yeah. But if you say like, these are hateful fucks, I have no idea where they're coming from, like, stop. They're almost completely correct. The thing they're doing wrong is saying there are only two genders, where they could just say, it's mostly two genders. And the real thing they're doing wrong is making trans people feel derided and unwelcome. A huge fraction of why people have certain political opinions is they just have a lot of feelings. And running a society for certain objective outcomes that we mostly agree on, for example, how many people want dirty streets? Sweet. How many people want unclean waters? You can't drink. Dope. How many people want unclean air? Cool. High crime? Expensive education? Yeah. Super expensive food people can't afford? National defense, not a priority. So ISIS can just establish a caliphate here if they want. It's almost everyone's for the same shit.
Yeah.
Then we can ask the question of like, how do we engineer a society to get to those things without like trampling on other things we like? Like how many people are against their own individual liberty? No one? So individual liberty is big. Everyone likes it, right? Sweet. So how do we conserve as much liberty as we can while vectoring into those good places is a technical question of economics and social construction. And that question intersects sometimes with political biases people have from political right and left, for example, and many other vectors, but only in some cursory way. And most of the time when people are like, well, I don't like that, they're just having a lot of feelings and they're getting distracted from the technical problem of how do we do these things properly.
Yeah, I've started borrowing a lot kind of from this like emotivist perspective to where when people are saying they don't like a thing or we shouldn't do a thing, I'm trying to figure out what they're actually saying because oftentimes it's not the thing that they're expressing. Sure. And then oftentimes people will say that, people might say something like I don't want to be involved in war anymore in the United States. And then Trump will say something about Greenland and they'll say like, okay, well, I want to attack Greenland. And it's easy to try to evaluate these statements as, okay, well, they said that they were anti-war and now they're pro-war. Well, it seems like they're hypocrites. When in reality, the statement was never I'm anti-war or I'm pro-war. What they're probably emoting, what they're saying is, I don't want to be involved in wars that I don't see like a good justification or rationalization for. It's probably what they're saying.
Seems like a tautology, but yes. A lot of times people are just expressing those in emotive language.
It seems like it, but I find that
bad. You're like, whoa.
A little bit, yeah. But I find that people will say things like that, but then they'll
even violate that.
Kind of, yeah. Or they won't realize the extent of what they're saying, and then when it comes to some other area, they will get tied up in the former statement, and they won't be able to apply it. I guess like fairly or reasonably in other areas. That just and what I'm saying there about the I don't want to be involved in war versus I don't want to be involved in unjust war. Mm-hmm. There will be a lot of people won't even be aware of what it is. I guess the extent to what they're saying is a great example. This might be like I'm opposed to all government like assistance or subsidies or whatever. You find a lot of conservatives that'll say stuff like this, but if they're older, my God, don't touch their fucking Social Security because it's all over for you. Sure. Or I think that the government shouldn't subsidize anything. And it's like, okay, what about your churches, right? And it's like, okay, well, hold on, maybe they do deserve tax breaks. Or for the left, it could be like we need to defund the police. It's like, okay, well, the most expensive new tech that we brought on are body cams, so we're getting rid of all of those. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. We talk about police training, or we talk about sending out EMS or people for mental health emergencies with the cops as well. Like, okay, well, this all needs more funding. And it's like, okay, maybe I don't mean defund the police. Maybe when I say defund the police, what I really mean is I want less funding going to police that I think are engaging in bad activity, but maybe there should be more funding going to police. But that doesn't slogan as well.
Against bad police activity.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, but that's not as marketable and everything. So yeah, it's frustrating, I guess, kind of bringing that out of people, because when you go into the political world, start arguing with people, they will defend the slogans and they will defend, and then sometimes get caught up in a world where they're trying to defend the slogans, to where I've argued with people who take that like we shouldn't be involved in foreign wars position, and I'll say like, well, what about like World War II?
That's a tough one, huh?
And they'll be like, no, well, if we would have been a trade partner to everyone and an ally to no one, it's possible that just through trading with, the British, and then that we would have cut off Japan's ability to win this war in this front, or we would have cut off Germany's ability to proceed more if we would have traded. And it was actually our interference. Like you'll get into so many worlds from it where it's like, wouldn't it be like, do we really feel this way? There's a lot of, when it comes to politicking or arguing political stuff, the vast majority of it is like chewing through people's rhetoric or trying to figure out what they actually mean, rather than, let's look at the study and let's look at this discrete stuff. Because kind of like you said, I guess this ties back to the gym stuff completely. A lot of it is, I wouldn't say solved, but we kind of know the answers if you remove ideology from it. You know, like you can watch 50 trillion videos on, optimal lifting form and optimal dieting and all this shit. But there's some retard that goes to the gym and curls in the squat rack and is only ever in the Smith machine, who has a better physique than you. And he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, but he just does shit every day and he likes going, he has fun with it. And that's it,
Sure.
Yeah, that a lot of it is just like this kind of like nibbling around the edges, or people are getting lost in the ideology instead of focusing on the actual problems itself.
Yeah, I would say that if you consider yourself intelligent and you consider yourself a rational thinker, a really good mental exercise to do is excise all ideology from your headspace as a temporary exercise, and try to aim for a world outcome which you think is nice and everyone will like, and then see like, okay, so which ideologies on the margins are helpful and which ones aren't. And I'm kind of going to pick and choose, because imagine saying something like, I only like American food, and then trying Chinese or Indian food for the first time and being like, look, the Matrix, like the green slivers start to fall, and you're like, somebody lied to me.
Sure, yeah.
It would be a preposterous statement, but unexamined, it goes nowhere. So then you can say, I really like tasty food. Oh no, now you're much closer to the truth about what you really like. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, if you have a lot of ideologies, it's in your own head. This is not stuff to say out loud. I'll say some of this out loud as an illustration, and just to give yourself the freedom to think about things that you might not have been cool to admit. Here are some. Every single hippie, leftist, communist with a fucking sign that said, ban nuclear proliferation in the reactor space, the energy space in the 70s, had a series of very good points. We need to consider them. That one hurts me deeply, because I think that missing out on the complete electrification and nuclearification of the US in the 1960s and 70s was like, we could have just never dealt with a fraction of the global warming that we have. It's one of those things that's not debatable. It's debatable, but you're going to lose the debate if you do it, because all the evidence is on one side and none of it's on the other. However, the intentionality of those people is often very sound. I mean, like, is nuclear 100% safe? Fuck no. What happens if nuclear goes wrong in the wrongest way? Real bad stuff. Real bad stuff. All right, let's talk about that stuff. Let's open our minds, not just push the hippies aside and be like they're insane, but like they have some good points. On the other hand, conservative individuals who say, there are only two genders. Do they have a point? Yeah, they have 98% of a point. They have most of the point. There are mostly just two genders. Is there space on the periphery for some gender stuff that's not just one or two? Oh yeah, hell yeah. But if you say like, these are hateful fucks, I have no idea where they're coming from, like, stop. They're almost completely correct. The thing they're doing wrong is saying there are only two genders, where they could just say, it's mostly two genders. It's almost all two genders. You'd be like, yes. And the real thing they're doing wrong is making trans people feel derided and unwelcome and harmed psychologically and occasionally physically. That's the real bad stuff we don't want. We don't have to throw away biological sex to help trans people go through a really tough time where there's lots of hateful pieces of shit around that have nothing but mean things to say to them. That's really the problem. But you can agree with most conservatives on the fact that, the gender thing is a real thing, and we have to contend with that. So being able to steel man your opponent's positions and extract as much good from them as you can from even the most vile and evil people. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, a person that I think, like, if you give me a loaded pistol and he just materializes, poof, instantly, fuck, oh my God, I'd probably put the pistol down and start ripping his face open, because he does not deserve to die quickly. But what are the good points to what he's done? Now, he has managed to have a very robust degree of state control. He has a government that does not suffer much from a dissolution of power and a question as to who really holds authority. That's good. If he wants something done, they're going to get it done, or they're going to try anyway and fuck up because it's communism. But that's good, right? We don't want total anarchy. Like, that's the opposite extreme, but that's also got its downside. What's the upside of total anarchy? fucking raw freedom, bro. Get them titties out, girl. Let's fucking go. Light up the cigars and give your kid a cigar. It's dope shit. Anarchy is the most fun way to go, but it has its own downsides. So instead of being like, well, I'm an anarchist, or I'm a totalitarian, or I'm a this, I'm right, I'm left, let's get together in a big circle and go, what can we pick from these ideologies that seems to make places where everyone in the world actually wants to live, and seems to not make as many places that no one in the world hardly at all wants to live. If you open the borders between North and South Korea and you somehow disseminate freedom of information to where the North Koreans know what's going on in Seoul, bro, ain't nobody left in North Korea after 5 days. They're gone. No one actually wants to do that. Turkmenistan, which actually my dad is from, no offense, Turkmenis, you guys are great. Turkmeni people are awesome. The Turkmeni leadership also needs the fucking gun to the head, versus Sweden. Who's debating that?
There weren't very many people trying to escape from West Germany into East Germany.
Okay, so were there any? That's actually a question for
I'm sure the only reason why I just said there were none is I didn't say there were none because I'm sure there was somebody with like a family member or somebody. So I'm not gonna. I'll always hedge because I'm
no. It's a great hedge, and I'm not saying there were zero, but I'm actually asking the question of, maybe there were zero, which doesn't make your point any less well received. 500 people over the course of 50 years is functionally fucking zero when the populations are 50 million each. But what if it is even zero? Then you're like, well, really no one, like West Germany is so much categorically better in almost every way than East Germany. We can at least pull out some ideas from that.
Sure.
And so once we have an understanding that we as humans really agree on roughly the same shit, and we really want societies to be roughly the same way, we can take our ideologies, put them aside for a second, and establish at least a system of government which has all the shit in common. So for example, if a government is not protecting us from criminals, it's failing. If a government is not keeping our water supply and air supply clean through intelligent regulation, it's failing. And so on down the line. Almost everyone agrees on that. Let's just have the government be small but powerful, do the shit we all agree on, and look, if we can't agree on something, 10%, like if 90% of the people don't vote for it, then it just doesn't get done, and then it's up to you to do it in private industry or with your own associative mechanisms. So I think that's a way forward, like essentially consensus government. Another wacky view I have that you might find weird is, I think hopefully in the future this is the case, but I think governments should be run by corporations, top to bottom, full send.
Okay.
The deliverable of the corporation is standard of living and justice, and the payment you give it is taxes. Corporations run almost everything category levels better than governments do by design, by economics. And we should just let corporations, in a very intelligent way, not just blank check to PepsiCo to go run the government. If you have a corporate approach to government, and hugely to this is the ability to have relatively open borders, not open borders where you just fucking walk through. Legal immigration is something that requires some due process, but is easily vettable, and you can just fuck off and go to another country. If you arrange that system, hopefully the globe is moving towards that, then you just have a competition of countries that are not just corporations, and people go to the ones where they like what they're getting for how much they're paying. And there's no right answer necessarily to what tax rates are. For example, I could want to live in a world, in a country. I want to live in a country where 60% of my income goes to social services. But you know what, man? I walk down the street and I know we don't have homeless people. And I know every kid, no matter how fucked up their life was, no matter how sick their parents were when they were a kid, no matter what their genetics were, is going to have an unbelievable life because everyone cares for them at all times. There's lots of people that'll pay 60% tax for that. But why do we need to foist it on people who don't? So if you let people live in different jurisdictions of a country or in different countries, they can see which relative tax rate to which delivery of services and lifestyle is dope. You might be like, I want 5% taxes. And you go to a country and you're like, here's 5%. It's like the fire hydrant's blown up. No one's showing up to fix it. There's a dead dog on the street. And you're like, But there could be another country just across the border has the same 5%, massive efficiency, and it's a fucking paradise. What that's going to lead to eventually in global evolution is a reduction in how much cost is being borne. A tax rate is going to go down because functionally no one actually wants to pay taxes, right? Your ideal cost for all goods and services is zero, including the rendering of government goods and services. So competition will make the price of government go down like this, and competition will make the quality of life that government supports escalate like that. Right now we have very little competition between countries because, like, if I'm a North Korean, I can't just like go to America or South Korea if I don't like what the fuck's going on. And I think that kind of directionality is something that just makes a ton of sense.
I like the concept. I think I would probably fight a lot on a lot of the individual incentives. So, for instance, the government representing like one person, one vote, I think is important. I don't know, for corporations representing financial interests, like I think you would have a higher proclivity to be nicer to your big, I guess, taxpayers.
Do you get the perception that PepsiCo discriminates how it treats customers based on their wealth?
No, but I don't know if you have
terrible corporate
but PepsiCo
policy.
sells like an individual product. They don't tax me on a percentage of my income. I think that if I stepped into a PepsiCo store and my income determined how much I paid, I think I would get much better service than another person.
Totally. Yeah. That's a very good point. Then the model could be modified to a fee system. The government charges you a fee for service delivery, monthly fee to live there, a yearly fee. It's not based on your income. It's just a fee. Everyone gets the same. If you have governments that are more like corporations, you have freedom of movement between peoples of the world, you can try a bunch of these different models and you can see which one works better. Because if the one that's based on income, it's kind of gross and icky and it's just they like rich people and the poor people aren't doing shit, then the poor people can just fucking move to a country in which they're like, I just pay a fee and I get the same thing as everyone else.
Sure. I think another big issue is obviously we don't have to explore the nitty-gritty of all of it, but the another big issue would be that the vast majority of corporations, 99% fail at some point, right? Even for small businesses, I want to say it's like 10 or 20% make it to the 5-year mark. It's like the failure rate is very high for understandable reasons. I don't know if as a government you have the luxury of complete and utter failure, bankruptcy, and then we just bring in another corporation.
Governments do it all the time. Governments fail all the time, and they just kick the can down the road with debt, or they get various bailouts.
But there's a difference between kicking the can down the road via debt versus I'm insolvent and I can't continue to operate. Like, so for the U.S. government, I don't think we've hit that point for a variety of reasons. We can't. But also, like, would a corporation have the luxury of also having like a treasury where they can,
corporations have cash on hand.
Yeah, but they can't usually create the cash. Sell infinite amounts of debt.
So here's the thing. They would be charging their citizens money. Thus, they would have a lot of money. And now the only two questions is, what is the relationship between how successful corporations are at managing scarce resources that have alternative uses versus governments? And the winner is corporations hands down by a fucking mile, with maybe some exceptions that are interesting to talk about. The other question is, what percent of governments fail? And how do you define failure? I would say the North Korean government has been failing from the start, but it's still there, right? Because they can just literally rob their people. And so if corporations start to fail, what's going to happen is they're going to be like, hey, we can't provide goods and services anymore. Haiti. Then other governments, aka corporations, come in and go, can we buy this country out and help hook you guys up with our baller standard of living? That's a big thing. After a while, you're going to have some diversity in who administers the governments, but it's going to be one of those like power law distributions where 80% of countries are served by like 5 big companies like Amazon, Google type of bullshit. And they're going to do an amazing job all the time. And the competition is just going to escalate the amazingness of the job. It's the same dynamic with government, except they have way less incentive to do better and way less downside if they do worse, because people can't leave and you can just keep robbing them for their money.
What do you think there comes a conflict of interest where people are voting for things that aren't easily quantifiable from a corporation standpoint or from a financial standpoint, but have more to do with like how people feel socially about a thing? So like, how would a corporation decide how to deliver things like abortion or trans stuff? I guess these are two, or gun rights or whatever. These are very divisive issues among the left and the right. They don't have like a clear financial, I guess,
Pepsi doesn't know how to quantify how much soda you like or want, except for how much you're willing to pay for it. And so it's the government's job to decide what policies are going to be enacted and to see if that pleases or displeases the vast majority of people in the country. But corporations have one awesome unifying principle, and it's greed. They want as much money as they can humanly get out of you. But they also know on second order thinking that if they fuck you over, you'll just leave or you'll just become so unproductive they don't get as much money. And so what they'll think about is, okay, what system of laws can we put in place that pisses off almost no one, makes everyone as well off as possible, but does it for an amount that doesn't also piss people off? That multiple constraints to the condition thing is something corporations deal with all the time, and governments have no good way of dealing with currently. So at the limit, it's very, very high efficient process where, in one country, you'd be like, you guys deal with trans rights like this? And they're like, yeah, most people seem to think it's okay, but not everyone. And if you don't like it here, you could just go somewhere else. because 95% of the people here, they seem to like that. And we want more people, so please don't leave. We'll really try to reconsider our laws. But generally, that means corporations probably wouldn't want to extend themselves into individual freedoms, hardly at all. They're just going to do like police, fire, service provision, civil support, military, and then they don't have to bother with, like, when you say trans shit, like, what exactly do we mean? Like, if I'm running a corporation that's running a country, do I think trans people should be beaten to death with clubs in the street? No, that's highly illegal, and you will go to jail for forever if you do that. Okay, what else do we need? Is it considered ethical to be outright hateful towards people in the street? Like, no, yelling at someone in the street when you don't know them is considered harassment and is punishable by a certain degree of offense. Or, hey, better yet, we just ship you the fuck out of the country. Like, someone else will take you, get the fuck out of here. So that's really the policy side of it. And if you harbor secret anti-trans views inside your head, but you're not allowed to yell at people in the street about how they're whatever different colored hair than you don't like, then really no one cares. And it's not really a problem anymore, except for to you in your own head. So a lot of these issues we have that we demand massive, like one way or the other way, a lot of them are just kind of private issues.
Do you think, what do you do when people are willing to suffer economic harm to do like damage to other people's rights to exist, I guess? So I think of, like, in my perfect capitalist mind, the Civil Rights Act never should have happened because corporations would say, oh, well, we want to sell to black customers and white customers, so we're just going to stop discriminating. Or banks are like, well, we're going to loan to everybody. But the decisions of the actors in that systems can sometimes constrain even the financial decisions that corporations will make, because the amount of money to be made will change based on the social inclinations, I guess, of the people beneath them. A classic example of this would have been, there's this concept called blockbusting, where if you had a whole block full of white people, you would come in and you would offer a huge buyout for a house of a person, way above maybe 2x the market value. And everybody knows that everybody is getting this offer from a realtor, and they know that if they don't take it, what's going to happen is one person will take that offer, and then when they do take that offer for their house to be bought in, the realtor will move in a black family, and then the property values will decrease.
Why would the realtor move in a black family?
Because the property values will decrease everywhere, and then the realtors can come in and buy up all the other stuff. Because
but those property values, the realtors already benefit from being high. Don't realtors want high prices?
Realtors want to buy and sell. Doesn't really matter if the prices are going up or down. They just want to be able to buy and sell. So if people are living, even if the property prices are going up, if everybody's living there for 50 years, you don't really make any money as a realtor. But if everybody wants to move out, then you make money on all of the closing fees and everything else when you're buying and selling stuff. This happened. I read a book on this. I think it was in Boston. This was happening a lot, and it was called block breaking, because you would move in one black family, property values would decrease, nobody would want to live with that black family on the street, and then they would all move out, and then they would basically come in and clean up, the realtors would. But in a situation, and then there's a number of other examples to where, like, in a perfect capitalist economy, why would you ever want to have, or in any capitalist economy, why would you ever want to segregate anything? It seems like you'd always make more money selling to, two different races of customer.
It's almost always true.
Yeah.
Segregation is very rare in the private sector.
Yeah, but it wasn't prior to the Civil Rights Act, in that you had a lot of segregated places, especially, in the South. What do you do, I guess, when you have a group of people, assuming that's true, and I think we can probably assume, depending on the time, this is true. What do you do when you have a group of people that are like, you know what? I'm okay running this less efficiently if I can guarantee that these people don't have rights, because fuck them. Yeah, how do you, I guess, is that a solution that you think your system would solve for, or how would it solve for it, or how do you approach those kinds of problems?
There's a ton of different ways to solve for it. One way we can potentially solve for it in a society that looks more like ours does now is to empower people who find themselves living among racist people to just fucking leave. Like, why would you, so for example, you're a person of whatever color and you go to a restaurant, they're like, we don't serve your kind. Do you want the government to mandate them to serve you? Why don't they poison you in the back? They're fucking cocksucking racists. They'll fucking poison you. I don't ever want to buy food from them. Don't make them have to fucking serve me. I don't want to be around them. I'm going to go to another restaurant. I'm going to move the fuck out of this dumbass town. And it turns out that people that are virulently racist are generally like regressive, backwards assholes. And it just, no one really wants to live around them. And so after mass migration of people, which you can help empower financially or otherwise, definitely freedom of movement, housing regulations, another topic, don't even get me on because it's totally insane. Deregulate housing like crazy. All of a sudden, people kind of live where they want, and they live around the people they want, and they don't ever have to deal with this in real life, because the people that are racist as fuck, they live usually somewhere the hell else, and nobody cares about them. They all live in their own little white or black or purple town, and no one gives a fuck. You want to be racist in your own town? God bless you.
Do you think that there's something to be said for, I guess it's similar actually to the obesity stuff, the dieting stuff we were talking about earlier. do you think there's anything to be said for be around people that you hate and endure it, and after a generation or two, people actually get along much better? I think in the United States, I think we are a testament to a lot of different people coming together and getting along, versus in the beginning, if you're like, well, let's just empower you to move. Now you have like, this is where the whites live in the US, here's where the blacks live, here's where the Asians live, and here's where the Hispanics live, because as soon as people hated each other, they just, piece the fuck out. And now everybody's like in their own little racially segregated corridor instead of being forced to kind of deal with each other for some period of time until they became more accustomed to each other.
If you make people that hate each other live together, if they hate each other for gigantic misunderstandings or cultural inertia, it's going to help the problem at great cost, but it will help. So you could go either way on that one. If you make people live with people of other races, and it's not a race thing, it's a culture thing, and they actually don't like the culture of the people they're living next to, you're going to engender their racism to expand even more.
Sure.
Some of the most racist people you'll ever meet live in New York City because they're around every fucking race. They get to see it plain as day. And some people behave in certain ways they do not like because they're not statistically prone.
Nobody
people.
Is doing a cross-sectional analysis.
Right.
Yeah,
multifactorial. It's a culture rather than
when
race
somebody
thing.
tells you they hate Indians or black, it's because they've had one or two bad experiences with, or a few bad experiences with.
Or
Yeah,
they saw a TV show or something.
Sure, yeah.
And then but if you put them around a lot of people of a certain race that are actually quite toxic and ridiculous to be around, they're just going to hate him more.
Sure.
And hate him in a deep way that you can't understand. And hate him in a way that a nice leftist 21-year-old college student who's only ever been around one race will tell them, like, you're just ignorant. They're like, no, I'm profoundly not ignorant. Come live in the fucking hood for a bit, bitch. You'll see what's going on. She's going to come out of that shit either very, very monk-like or racist as fuck.
Sure.
And that doesn't, I could have said hood. I could have said fucking trailer park. It doesn't fucking matter. Or like, there are Southeast Asian communities that are violent as fuck too, bro. Every fucking I'll do my own people, Jews. You got dope Jews all over the fucking place. And then you got some fucking Hasidic Jews that don't even believe that you and I are fucking human. And I'm Jewish. They don't look at me like a human. They don't think I'm fucking human. They think I'm charitably at least fallen from the great race. But I mean, are you Jewish at all genetically?
Some people say that I am, but no, not at all.
No, not at all. So they mean you're subhuman to them. And so does that mean all Jews are bad? No, but are there some Jews that real humans will run into and be like, they told me to like love everyone, but these people hate me. What the hell are they supposed to think after that? Now, if they're really enlightened, they'll be like, they're just people coming from their own perspective. They're kind of persnickety, and I'm going to give them their space. But we have every right to say that versus like live right next to them and be best friends with them. If they don't want to be friends with you is the problem, then it's tricky. I don't think we should be doing a lot of top-down shit with race. I think it's really fucking murky. I think we should be treating everyone to the same civil standard of what is legal and illegal and what is behaviorally approved and not approved. And after that, people should mix and mingle as they like. And if a lot of people like to hang out with people that look like them, dope. I love that shit. I'll throw the peace sign when I walk by. You guys, what's up? No hate. But if people want to mix and mingle and hang out with all sorts of different races, then that's also dope. There's no wrong answer there. Segregation is wrong because people said, hey, you can't hang out with those people. It's not wrong if it just happens by itself. You ever see a fucking group of 4 Indian families at the museum and you're like, motherfuckers just keep to themselves. What the fuck? They're just friends with each other, you idiot. They have culture in common. They don't hate anyone. They're just like together. So sometimes that can happen in community scale. It's not up to us to say it's bad or whatever. And some people really like being the outsider. I know tons of white people that love living around brown people. It fucking really enlightens them. And that's dope. And if you move to a city where most people are brown and you're white and they fucking love you and you love them, they like having you're the minority now and they love that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's people being hateful and criminal to each other that's bad, and governments encouraging segregation that's bad. Whatever happens after you let people be free, as long as they're not hurting each other, it's not really up to us to decide how much intermixing or mingling there should be. That's up to people to decide.
Sure. I think that one of the more frustrating things I have, I guess I'm kind of wrapping this part up, I wish that people had better ways of measuring outcomes and that we were just moving towards outcomes rather than everything is kind of like an exercise in political ideology.
Yeah, man.
Outcomes be damned. Because I feel like there are some there are some things that I believed very strongly that even in my lifetime have radically changed. And one of the challenging things, so when we talk about who should have the freedom to do what, or where should segregation come from, we can all agree that some self-segregation is fine, that if certain people hang around certain people because they want to, that's okay. And then you get these weird second and third order questions where it's like, okay, well, if all the white people want to hang out with the white people, then, and all the black people want to hang out with the black people, that's a-okay. But if the white people want to hang out with the white people because they think all the black people are criminals, and the black people want to hang out with the black people because they think all the white people are going to lynch them, well, maybe that's actually not okay. Maybe there's something else that needs to happen there. Sure. But it's always hard to figure out, well, it's not really hard. It's hard to fight through people's ideologies to figure out, well, what is the good friction to where it's like, because we all, I mean, to go back to the gym stuff, that's good friction, right? The gym is not fun, but you suffer through something to hit some good outcome,
Sure.
And it's hard sometimes to figure out where the good friction is versus the bad friction when people aren't measuring outcomes, but they're measuring ideologies. I think one of the funniest flips I've seen of nature versus nurture, of biology versus environment, I think happened with education, where I think that, and even growing up, I thought this, that men just have good brains for learning and women just can't ever do school as well as men. It's just not a thing that they can do.
You thought that?
Yeah, because guys
really?
are good at math and science and women just aren't. And I think a lot of society kind of thought this. And as we've pushed more and more on the affirmative action side for women and given them more opportunities, now we've hit a world to where I feel like a lot of the conversation is flipped, where it's like, okay, well, school is bullshit because men are actually physical learners. We want to be outside and we want to learn this way. And sitting at school and being demure and submissive and to a teacher and all that, that's a woman's thing. It's insane that they're allowed to do that. And it's crazy to see how much the talk has changed about the environment of schooling needs to be changed to suit men more, because now it's unfair towards women, when it feels like none of the actual, that change feels like an ideological flip, where a lot of the same people before that would have been it's all biology, and well, actually it's all environment. And yeah, it's frustrating when it feels like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to create a better world where we all agree on the different outcomes, or are we just trying to flex our political ideology to see who's can win in I guess in the voting booth or in a debate, and then we don't outcomes be damned. And that's very frustrating when political ideologies start to create bad environments for everybody. It's like, okay, well, this is bullshit. We have to change this. We need to do something about this because this isn't helping anybody. It's just making you feel good about it. And you don't even live here or do anything about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally agreed.
Do you think in the future, are you heading in a more